This is part 2 of the logistics section. You're first going to start off with the tools. You need a toolbox for sure, and you probably want to keep that with you in the vehicle. It's with the bike all the time. I've tried it in the pits, but we end up running back and forth, so I just keep it in the van. Keep an assortment of all your tools, wrenches, open end, sockets, any kind of special star tools, any security tools. I think you'll find that to be very helpful. Nice set of tools. Now to get to some special tools. Normally I would put the air compressor in the category of equipment, but for the purpose of this video I'm going to list it in the tools. You need a nice air compressor. This one's really old. It's 9 years old, but it gets up to, a couple hundred psi, and you'll need to at least get up to 105 to 110 to break the nut on the countershaft sprocket loose and to tighten it up. So with the air compressor, there's a little one that you can use to blow out salt and things. There's the chuck to air up the tires, and there is the tire gauge. Try to use the same tire gauge every time you check your tires. It's also good to have the old-fashioned broom and brush. The broom and brush there's salt everywhere, and it gets everywhere. Every time you get down on the ground or even on your tarp, it's going to get on you. So the brush is very handy for brushing yourself off of any salt that's on you before you get into the vehicle. Salt sticks on everything. We also bring a vacuum cleaner because eventually all the sweeping and things just don't work, and you need that vacuum cleaner to get some of the salt out of the vehicles, because like I said, it gets deep. We always bring a portable battery drill, another battery, a charger, and drill bits. You never can tell when you're going to need those. I bring a set of calipers here. I use those primarily to check on my chain adjustment. Torque wrench, anything that you have to loosen and tighten back, you need a torque wrench. You also need the torque values on those things, especially the countershaft sprocket. Chain breaker, I've had occasion to use that. Now that I've got 2 chains and I figure out how best to do that, I generally don't need a chain breaker. Although if you use a chain breaker, I do use the split pin master links. Some people don't like those. You put them on correctly, they're just fine. I use the infrared thermometer here. I check the engine, make sure it's got heat in it, or if it's not got too much heat. Safety wire, you'll be using safety wire a lot. They may have you safety wire something that you didn't think, or you may end up safety wiring something you didn't think about. Hacksaw and another blade. Always have a hacksaw and another blade. Soldering iron and solder. I found that's very useful out there, because sometimes connections break or you just have to wire around something. Heat gun and shrink tube. That's in case that's to support you in some of the wiring that you just did with the soldering gun. Also bring extra fuses to fit the bike. Then also bring some extra connectors and wire strippers in case you have to do that. Occasionally, if you break something off, you're going to have to be able to drill it out and clean it out and rethread it, and that's what this is for. Multimeter is occasionally you'll have to, salt is very bad on the electrical connections out there, and you'll have to check. It'd be good to have a multimeter. I use the code reader. I take it out there with me just to check and see if I've set a fault code, what it is, and then I can reset it. It's a very useful tool. This is a small little vise. I like to take a bigger vise, but I take a little small vise that can hold, if I'm cutting a piece of metal or something like that, they can hold it. At least one or two of these little clamps to support whatever you're doing with the vise. This is what you're going to need to bust the countershaft sprocket loose. This is an air piece, but you can also get an electronic one. But you're going to need that because those things are they're a little bit over 100 foot-pounds. This is a good piece because, you know, in the other section I told you about bringing 2 locks, whatever. Occasionally that fails, and 2 keys for every lock. Occasionally that fails, so you need a bolt cutter. This piece is to go into the front axle, and so if you need to take the front axle off, you need that special tool. This piece here is for loading my Bluetooth. If I want to load a different tune, I get my tunes from D&K Tunes, and so if I want to load a different tune, it takes about 15 minutes. I use this in my computer and just fine. Make sure you bring a spark plug wrench, a spark plug gauge, and I use some anti-seize on all the spark plugs. So this is about all the special tools I'll bring. The toolbox has most of the stuff I'm going to use generally. So these are some of the things that I use: vacuum cleaner and air gauge and the air gun I use a lot. It's not all of the list, but this gives you a good idea. It also gives you a good idea and why you need to be able to share your tools with some of the international riders, because they cannot bring all this stuff. So feel free to share and help out your buddies out there. Thank you very much. The next part we're going to do will be on equipment.